One of the most common situations that I run into being in the Bible Belt is this idea that just because you're a Christian or you believe in God, you're inherently a good person, or you have a better chance of being a good person. The entire concept has never really made any sense to me. Today, we're continuing our review of Gothix's video where she talks about how she irrationally hates atheists. She's going to be discussing how Christians and a Christian theocracy would be better than secular individuals and secular societies. So if you want to fuck around and find out how atheists are deficient when compared to Christians and Christian societies, then please stay tuned. What's up, heathens? How y'all doing? I'm the Godless engineer, and I critically analyze apologist claims to give you the best arguments and information so that you can stand up and use your voice. Now, this is part 2 of our Gothix review. In part 1, we discussed how Gothix irrationally hates atheism. We established that Christianity has a rather warped view of morality, and it is completely divorced from any real sense of morality. And today, Gothix is going to attempt to prove that Christians are inherently better than atheists because they believe in God, or rather, they have the fear of God in them.
So, all right, now we're going to move on to another argument that I commonly hear, and that is the social consensus argument. So this idea that we can determine what's right and what's wrong based on how many people in society believe that particular thing is good.
Now, I think what she's talking about here is actually social contract theory. I mentioned social contract theory in the previous video and how it's a fundamental component of any working society. It's just one of a variety of ways that we can justify certain actions as being morally good or bad. And while it is a very subjective way to make moral decisions, all moral foundations are subjective in nature. Having a majority of citizens that agree some action is morally good or bad is just how societies have always operated. And that includes even if you base your criteria off of what God wants and doesn't want. It's still everybody agreeing to suck God's dick.
For example, a couple of generations ago, homosexuality, divorce, and adultery were concepts that, in the eyes of culture at that moment, was considered sinful and frowned upon. However, now, you got gay everywhere. Everything is gay. Gay, 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 gay.
Why are you gay?
Divorce? Oh yeah, fine. Divorce. Keep divorcing and eventually you're going to end up being with someone that doesn't annoy you.
I do believe that adultery is still considered taboo, if I'm not mistaken. Like, cheating on your significant other hasn't all of a sudden become a good thing to do. Oh, or is she talking about polyamorous relationships? That could be the case here. If that is the case, then what she's referring to, there's no cheating going on in those relationships. Of course, what I'm talking about is when all of the parties involved are consenting to this kind of relationship. Obviously, you could still cheat when you're in a poly relationship, but that's still considered to be morally bad. I genuinely do not care what is considered sinful. And her just shouting gay, 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 gay like that is a perfect representation of conservatives. Like I said in the last video, all conservatives want to do is control other people and make them follow God's rules. Someone being gay simply doesn't affect you in any way unless it opens them up to being a consensually romantic option for you. The homophobia expressed by conservatives nowadays is really sad and pathetic. Divorce is also not a bad thing. Speaking as a divorced person myself, divorce is great. You can start off meshing really well in the relationship and even get to the point where you are married, but sometimes people grow apart and those relationships break down and can't be repaired. I think stigmatizing divorce, like Gothix is pining to do, is only going to cause a lot of problems. Toxic and abusive relationships should absolutely be terminated. If you're in one, you deserve better, and you should get out if you can't or don't want to fix the relationship. Something that I mentioned in the previous video is that a more liberal worldview or philosophy generally wants to allow people or afford people the ability to make their own decisions for themselves for whatever works for themselves. Within reason, mind you. Conservatives seem to just want to force other people to do what they want them to do. And what they want them to do is to ultimately be controlled by the magical cosmic wizard in the sky. I'm just trying to put the two viewpoints here into perspective, really.
And then also think about adultery. It's not something as frowned upon as it used to be. And these are just a few examples of how a shift in culture can define new terms for morality. And this is so dangerous. What is really stopping society from moving in a territory where, for example, pedophilia is socially acceptable?
You know, I really haven't gotten the memo that adultery has now somehow become a good thing. Unless, of course, she's talking about the polyamory that we were discussing before. But ultimately, it just seems like she's pulling shit out of her ass, fear-mongering her audience in order to get the emotional reaction that she needs to get. She perceives polyamory to be adulterous, or she perceives people to be okay with adulterous relationships. And I just simply don't see that in our culture. Adultery is not getting normalized, and adultery has not become a good thing. She also talks about shifting culture and changing morality, and I don't understand why she's bringing up this point, because that's how things have always operated. Even Christianity has changed with the culture. If you just look back to things that I've mentioned before in our previous review of Gothix's video, the LGBTQ demographic, as well as slavery and the rights afforded to women, all of those things have changed in Christianity. The viewpoints of Christians have changed on those particular topics across the ages. So in this particular context, she's not actually proving how her worldview is all that different from a more liberal worldview. Also, is her statement about pedophilia about the Republican Party? Because I kind of feel like it should be. Republicans are the only ones in state governments that are passing laws, like actively proposing and passing laws to protect the right to marry a child, which seems to normalize the practice of hebephilia. That would be being attracted to pubescent children. And you can make a solid, coherent argument that this is a stepping stone to pedophilia. And this smokescreen that Republicans often deploy is rather intriguing, because they try to paint the LGBTQ demographic as being the pedophiles, when the only ones in this conversation that are doing anything in order to advance to legalizing pedophilia are the Republicans. They are constantly affirming the quote-unquote right to fuck children. They also help hide their Republican friends when they get caught fucking children. If Gothix is pointing her fingers at the LGBTQ community with this charge of pedophilia, only helps to hide the actual ones that are trying to fuck children, and that would be the Republicans. It's just a giant smokescreen to hide people that are actually advancing laws in government that allow them to do that. So I kind of feel like this situation right here is Gothix just basically shooting herself in the foot, because this argument just makes no sense, and it only highlights how bad the Republican Party is.
Now, I'm sure some of you will say laws. The laws will stop people from thinking that's morally okay. All right. So now we're going to get into the argument of government authority, that the laws are responsible for giving us our sense of right and wrong. So if a government tomorrow said that pedophilia was acceptable, then that's what we're going to go with, right?
So I will say that some laws do inform our moral knowledge, and then there are other laws that are formed due to our moral knowledge. But laws are not the driving force of our moral information or our moral determinations. Cultural shifts are the ones that drive our moral intuitions. And these cultural shifts are affected by a multitude of factors. But the one thing that all of them include is the fact that people are the driving force of these cultural shifts. People and their subjective ideas about how we ought to behave. Not because some magical wizard has published some new edict that indicates how we should behave. It's because people have changed their minds on how we ought to behave. And as far as her continuing the whole pedophilia thing, again, I just want to emphasize that Republicans are the only ones that are advancing laws to allow conservatives, Republicans, anybody to fuck children. And these are happening in red states, primarily red states. The LGBTQ community is not full of pedophilia, and they are not pedophiles themselves. Though Gothix and other conservatives and Republicans like Gothix want to deploy the smokescreen that they are, because I feel like it hides the true nature of the conservative group out there that's really pushing for laws to protect their quote unquote rights to marry children. And potentially one of the reasons why they want to do this is because of, ding ding ding, the fucking Bible. If anyone was out there trying to make pedophilia normalized in society, it would be people that are pushing this whole fucking idea from the Bible. The Bible is rife with old men purchasing young pubescent girls to marry and then fuck to procreate with. So, I mean, maybe Gothix is stating here that she has a real problem with these ideas in the Bible, these horrible ideas in the Bible, and that she disagrees with her Republican counterparts, even though she's been red-pilled. I doubt that, though, because she does not seem to be all that introspective.
Now, I'm not going to accept the rebuttal that the government would never do such a thing, because if we look back in history, there are so many atrocities the government's been responsible for, either directly or as a result of indifference, their policies, or government-funded propaganda.
I just don't even know why there aren't uprisings all over the country, and maybe there will be.
The biggest terror threat in this country is white men, most of them radicalized to the right, and we have to start doing something about them.
Right, that would be a bad argument, but that's because Republicans and states that hold a supermajority of Republicans in the state government are advancing bills to protect the right to marry children. I mean, they're doing this because it's in the Bible, correct? Like I said, selling off your young pubescent daughters is all over the place in the Bible. It's got to be okay, right? I mean, God acted like it was okay, so therefore it must be okay to marry a child. And with so much real, hard evidence of the Republicans making inroads and passing laws to protect their quote unquote right to marry a child, it would be really dumb to say that the Republicans wouldn't be the ones most likely to legalize pedophilia. I also feel like one of the biggest threats to national security in the USA would be Christo-fascist white men. They have become radicalized to the right, and domestic terrorist events have been on the rise since the Oompa Loompa got elected. So yeah, they are one of the biggest threats to national security. That's just a statement of fucking fact.
Now, let me be very clear. This doesn't mean that everyone who's in a position of power is evil and intentionally wants to cause harm because they have no sense of right and wrong. No, what it does mean is that their worldview will ultimately influence the type of laws and changes they want to push out to the rest of society. So it's always comical to me when people say, I don't want a Christian in office because I don't want them to push their beliefs on everyone else.
Well, specifically, I don't want radicalized Christo-fascists in government, because they will and have, and even in recent history, pushed their religion on the entire country. And they do this instead of passing laws that make rational sense. They only seem to care about forcing everybody to follow their particular version of Christianity. You know, the kind of Christianity that thinks that Jesus was white and blue-eyed, and he was, you know, going, oh yeah, America, all the way over there in Jerusalem. Pushing a single version of a religion, or a single religion at all in general, on the entire population of the United States is a violation of the First Amendment to the Constitution. That is what most people have a problem. Not the fact that some politician is a Christian. As long as you can separate your religious belief from the laws that you are proposing and passing, we don't have any problems. If you can pass reasonable and rational laws that don't ultimately depend upon your faith and your religion, then it's perfectly fine. Not everybody out here in the United States wants to follow what your particular version of the magical wizard in the sky likes and doesn't like. Other than that, I'm fine with religious politicians. I mean, I kind of have to be, considering that most politicians that are in the government are religious in some kind of way. And for the most part, I feel like most liberals that are currently in the government have an easier time separating their faith in whatever deity they believe in and their duty to the country. Republicans, on the other hand, seem to have a really big problem separating their faith from the laws that they pass, because the laws that they pass seem to only have a basis in what their current magical wizard in the sky wants.
I love getting comments like this. It brings me so much joy. John says, coming from an atheist, I myself don't want an atheist in office. This is one of the most common comments that I get from atheists that I love. I love. Because they'll say, I'm an atheist, I don't believe in God, but I'd rather be in a society filled with God-fearing Christians than an atheist society.
Atheist or secular societies exist perfectly fine in the world now, and they don't have any kind of worry about what a deity wants at all. Japan is secular, and they seem to be doing fine. There are plenty of European countries that are also primarily atheist or secular, and they're doing just fine. So that doesn't seem to be the issue here. These God-fearing Christians that Gothix is talking about are the same God-fearing Christians that would throw community barbecues while they lynch the local black person. Oh, don't worry, the police were there watching and eating ribs while the black people were being lynched. These God-fearing Christians are the ones that fought against women's suffrage. These God-fearing Christians are the ones that instituted the African slave trade. These God-fearing Christians were the same ones carrying tiki torches and wearing khaki pants while they screamed blood and soil and you will not replace us, which, if you're not familiar with those phrases, those were very popular Nazi slogans. God-fearing Christians have regularly stripped the rights of people in various countries at multiple points in history. More recently, here in Alabama, the God-fearing Christians have stripped people of the option to have IVF. And that was a purely theological decision too. It was in the decision, like the only thing that they had to support their decision, making zygotes children, were Bible verses. These Supreme Court judges were basically forcing every single Alabamian to follow their particular flavor of Christianity. This particular flavor of Christianity, these theological positions are not held by all Christians, let alone every single person in Alabama. But now even I am being forced to follow their particular faith in some kind of way. But they're God-fearing Christians, right? So every decision they make is inherently good because they're God-fearing. This whole idea that if someone's a God-fearing Christian, so therefore it must be a good thing, or whatever decision they're making must be a good thing because they fear the wrath of God, really fucking aggravates me. It really aggravates me because they don't care what their decisions or what they're saying or anything like that affects other people in their society. They don't care about that. All they care about is placating the magical wizard in the sky because they think that wizard is going to strike them dead at any moment if they piss him off. So they don't care what effects their decision has on other people. They want to force other people to follow their particular version of their faith because they feel like the cosmic wizard's going to get pissed off. And that deity most likely doesn't even exist. As far as if you're reading the Bible, any way that you can interpret the Bible, that God most likely, like 99.999%, as close to 100% that you could be, doesn't exist. Which means that ultimately conservative Christians, like Gothix here, they just want to force other people to follow their version of Christianity. And that's all they care about. Now, don't mistake me for saying that people can't have their faith. I'm perfectly fine with people having faith. What I'm not fine with is when you try to force that faith on other people. And that's essentially what I'm having to do here in Alabama in a multitude of ways. That's what every person in America is having to do since Roe v. Wade was overturned. And I feel like this entire control aspect to conservative Christianity is why Republicans and conservatives mesh so well with evangelical Christianity. Both of these positions want to absolutely control everything and force everybody to live the way that they want them to live. They just simply want to control people's lives. And that seems to be what the evangelical conservative movement that we've been seeing lately is aimed to do.
I'd rather follow the values that come from the Bible than the values prescribed by culture, but I'm still an atheist.
Oh, values from the Bible, you say? What values would that be exactly? I can think of a number of values that are contained in the Bible. What about the subjugation of women as sexual objects used to incubate other humans? Or could it be the buying and selling of women that you would prefer as a value? How about the unjustified murder of LGBTQ individuals? I'm sure that's right up Gothix's alley. Is that the kind of values that she's talking about here? Ooh, I know one. How about attacking other nations that don't believe in the exact same kind of God that you do and committing a total genocide on that group of people? I mean, that is a value in the Bible, one that God expresses several times. Are those the kind of values that you're talking about here, Gothix? If you're not, then you're just pretty much cherry picking what values you like out of the Bible. You're cherry picking, subjectively choosing which parts of the Bible you find appealing to you. But what Gothix is doing is she's presenting this very subjective cherry picking of values from the Bible as being objective or absolute. These are the absolute values that should be used to govern a society. When in reality, she's using a moral foundation, a criteria that's just as subjective as anybody else. There is no objectivity when it comes to a subjective criteria for pulling out what you like from the Bible and saying people should follow these values. And it also gives people the false sense of security around God-fearing Christians, thinking that they are good people inherently because they fear God. They fear this magical wizard in the sky that could strike them down dead at any point. Honestly, if somebody is out there telling me I'm a good God-fearing Christian, I am going to be totally skeptical of that person, because there's no reason for you to be like, oh, hey, I'm God-fearing, so you don't have to worry about me. It feels like you're trying too hard, and maybe you should be investigated a little bit. Like, maybe just have a reasonable sense about people when they're overly like, I promise I'm not a pedophile. Why would you say that? Why would you need to emphasize this? It just makes you look suspicious. But anyways, that's going to be it for this part of the video. We still have more of Gothix's video to go through, so I hope that you will join me in future installments of this review. Let me know what you think down below. Do you think that Gothix is just shooting herself in the foot here, describing certain demographics out there as being pedophiles, while at the same time providing a smokescreen for the actual pedophilic individuals? Do you think that she's doing that or no? Let me know down below in the comments. And while you're down there, make sure you smash that like button and subscribe if you like this kind of content. Don't forget to stand up and use your voice. Bye, heathens.